It's great to be here and looking at that picture of my family. That's from March when my son, who's actually my oldest, finally got married. So there were for a long time 5 of us, my husband and I, my son, and my 2 daughters. And then over the last 5 years, we've grown to a family of 8. My middle daughter got married, my youngest daughter got married, and then my son finally, like I said, got married. So now there are 8 of us, and it's so fun. And then my youngest daughter had her daughter, my granddaughter, so now we have 9. And it's cute. We are a close family. We go out to dinner a lot and stuff, and we were eating dinner recently, and my son just said, I can't believe we're a family of 9 now. And it's really exciting. But, I think we're really not a family of 9. We're actually a family of 10. And the reason we're a family of 10 is because, not included at that photo, but there at the event, of course, is my best friend, and her name is Ruth. And she does a lot with us. We have family dinners, and Ruth comes over. We have birthday parties or events or whatever it is, and Ruth is always there. We, will plan vacations, and everybody will say, can you see if Ruth can come? Everybody loves Ruth. And again, she's been my best friend for years. And it's not just my immediate family. My extended family, my parents, they love Ruth. They'll call me and say, and how's Ruth? My brothers, they love Ruth. My nieces and nephews, everyone loves Ruth. And again, so do I. But it's funny because it wasn't always that way. When I first met Ruth in the summer of 1980, I did not like her. I went to a party. It was a local party at someone's house. And back then, I was into what would be called the punk rock scene. And I actually had a shaved head. And I thought I was really cool at the time. And I was at this party, and someone who was friends with the person hosting the party was Ruth. And in 1979, there was this movie. It was called 10. And 10 was to express the perfect woman. And this woman, Bo Derek, was the star. She wore these braids, and her hair was completely braided, and it looked super pretty. And of course, everyone wanted to be Bo Derek. So I get to the party with my shaved head, and there's Ruth with her braids looking like Bo Derek. And I thought, who is this loser? Like, I would never be friends with her. And then it was funny, in time, and this is still when I was in my dark days, my friends and I rented an apartment together, and there was a guy that lived on the couch. We had a wide assortment of people living with us, so another story. But Ruth ended up dating the guy that lived on the couch. And we ended up having great conversations together. We ended up going to the same schools together. We ended up discovering that we had a lot in common. We both went to Orange Coast College. We both transferred to Cal State Long Beach. And at around the same time, we both became followers of Christ. And we started going to church together. And it was really funny. We laugh about this all the time. But when we first, as these brand new Christians, started going to church together, people would graciously pray for us. And there was a lady, I'll never forget her. Her name was Linda Reed. And she prayed for Ruth and I, and she said in her prayer, I just see that God is going to give you guys parallel lives. And we kind of looked at each other like, oh, that's super corny, but whatever, we'll take it. And it's funny because we joke about that. We both got married at around the same time. We both had kids at around the same time, and all 3 of our kids grew up together. We always lived in the same neighborhoods. We lived in an apartment complex in Costa Mesa. Ruth was 3 doors down. She moved to Aliso Viejo. I moved to Laguna Niguel. Then we went to San Clemente. Now we live 4 doors down from each other and have for 20 years. We were basically on the same education track. We go to the same church, and we've always gone to the same churches, and we've had the same jobs too. So we have, joked about the parallel lives. And it's funny because if anything bad happens to me, she'll say, "Oh no, the parallel lives." And it's the same with her. I'm thinking, "Oh no, it's going to happen to me too." And it's great. I have been best friends with Ruth for literally 4 decades, for 40 years. She's such a part of my life and my family's lives. And it's not like we don't have any other friends. We do. And many of our friends are the same friends. And our closest friends have been formed through groups like this. Groups in churches where we meet other people who are kind of on the same track, have the same goals, the same vision, connect together and grow together in community. Now, I can't imagine my life without my husband. We've been married again for 39 years. I can't imagine my life without my kids, without my parents, and I can't imagine my life without Ruth. She really is my best friend. And, I always thought the word best friend meant one person. But when my daughters were in junior high and high school, they would say, "Oh, Elise is my best friend." And then 2 days later, Shay is my best friend. It's like, wait, did you switch? And it was suddenly this word best friend meant a community of people, like those who are closest to you. And I think that kind of describes what friends are. It's the people that you choose to do life with. Who are your community? Who are the people in your community that you would say, these are the people that I team up with, that I do life together with? These are my friends. And there are great benefits to friendship, great benefits to community. It provides for us a sense of belonging. We're part of a group. We've been designed by God to do life together. And it's so beneficial to have that community to do life with. It impacts our happiness, being a part of a community. When you get together with other people, it helps you to get your focus off yourself. And getting your focus off yourself elevates your happiness. So many times I've felt, down about myself and my own circumstances. And then getting together with others just gets your mind off of whatever it is that you're struggling with or dealing with and helps you to be part of a community. Friends help us when we're experiencing hardships. They come alongside us, they care for us, encourage us, carry us through hard times. They give us a sense of purpose as we can help them too, coming alongside them, encouraging them, carrying them through their hard times. And, they provide us the help that we need to keep us from making foolish decisions that we're going to regret later. They love us, and when they see us potentially going on a wrong track, they'll say, "Hey, do you think that's a great idea? Do you really want to make that choice? Have you thought about that? Let me help you consider this." Friends are critical. WebMD on the internet, most of us look at WebMD. WebMD says that people with the strongest network of good friends and community live longer than people with few friends. Friends are important. And, often I'll see in my news feed medical studies that are related to friendship. I read one just last week that was published by PLOS Medicine. You can look it up. It's called Social Relationships and Mortality Risk. And I was shocked to read this, but after doing data and research, they discovered that being lonely and isolated was as bad for a person's health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. They also said it's as harmful as not exercising and twice as bad for health as being obese. So you think, wow, it is critical that we have friends, that we be part of a community. So I think that's the first thing that we could kind of note from all of this. If you're taking notes, you might want to jot this down, but we need to admit that we need friends. We need friends. We've been designed for community. We've been designed for friendship. And it's been explained like this before. I think this is a great way of illustrating it. But if you're doing a barbecue, let's say you're doing a beach barbecue, not where you have gas to provide the source of the heat, but you get coals. If you buy coals and you put lighter fluid on the coals and you light the coals will get hot. And together, collectively, those coals provide heat, and you can roast your hot dogs, make your s'mores, whatever it is. But if you take those coals and you reach into them with, let's say, tongs or something, and you remove one coal from the group of coals and set it on its side, in a short amount of time, the heat leaves that coal and the coal dies out. And that's what happens with us too. If we're not a part of community, if we don't have friendships, if we're taken from community and taken from friendships, it's almost like something in us dies. We weren't designed to live that way. We were designed to live with others. So, in thinking about our need for friends, it's important that we choose our friends wisely, that we say, who would be good friends? Who should I be friends with? Should I be friends with anybody? Should I just grab whoever's around? And the answer to that is no. And I can say no from an authoritative source, and that is the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs is found in the Old Testament. It's ancient wisdom literature. It was written thousands of years ago and brings us wisdom. And the book of Proverbs, in Proverbs chapter 11, verse 30, says, "Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm." So that's saying it's so important that we choose our friends wisely, that we think through this. Who are the people who are going to be my friends? Because we become like our friends. If our friends are foolish, we become foolish. And if our friends are wise and good friends, we become like that too. I mentioned that Ruth and I both work here. It's funny because sometimes people will come up to me from behind and say, "Ruth?" Or they'll come up to her and say, "Oh, Stephanie, and it's like, no, she's over there or she's in that office. And we really don't look alike. I mean, especially if you were to shave our heads, we look nothing alike. She is stunning. She's a beautiful woman. But, over 40 years of spending so much time together, you develop the same mannerisms. You start to stand the same way. You laugh at the same things. You use the same expressions. You become like your friends. And people notice that. They sense that. There's an old Spanish novel, Don Quixote. It was written in the 1600s. 1615 it was published. And there's a character in there, Sancho Panza. And he's the squire of Don Quixote. And he has a famous line where he says, "Tell me your company, and I will tell you what you are." You know what he's saying there? If you show me who your friends are, I can tell you who you are. I can describe you and who you are by the friends that you have. And that's why it's so important that, as the point says up there, we choose our friends wisely. We've got to choose our friends wisely. It says this not only, like I mentioned, in the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament, it says it in the New Testament too. 1 Corinthians, a book in the New Testament, chapter 15:33 says, "Don't be deceived." So this is something that we all have the potential to be deceived about. It says, "Don't be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals." So when you have friends that are not good friends, that are not good people, it rubs off on you. And you have to be very careful that you choose your friends wisely. So you might wonder then, well, what should I look for in choosing my friends? What kind of friends should I have? And I think there's some suggestions for us, again, in that ancient wisdom literature in the book of Proverbs. So let me pull up a few of these and look at some of the things that should characterize the people that we choose to be our friends. The first thing is these people should be faithful. Faithful people. Proverbs 17:17 talks about this. Proverbs 17:17 says, "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity." And over the last 40 years, I have experienced a lot of adversity. I've had difficulties financially, difficulties in family relationships, difficulties in relationships with other friends. But I can tell you that Ruth has stuck by my side. I mean, she has been there. She's been faithful. She supported me, even when I was in times of great adversity. And the next thing that the Proverbs draw out is that a friend should be kind. So the second one would be kind, faithful and kind. Proverbs 27:9. Proverbs 27:9 says, "Oil and perfume make the heart glad." Something that smells good, something that feels good, makes the heart glad. And the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. Somebody who really is kind, who really cares about you, who's not in competition with you, who doesn't rejoice when you fail, who isn't secretly happy when they hear that something bad has happened to you because it makes them feel better about themselves, but someone who really cares about you, who wants you to do well, who rejoices when good things happen to you and to your family. The next one, the third one, is this person should be honest. It's very important that they're honest. Again, this is Proverbs 27:5-6. Proverbs 27:5-6 says, "Better is open rebuke than hidden love." And it says, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy." It's saying, a real friend will tell you the truth. I mean, when you're doing something destructive, when you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, a real friend will say, "You know what? That's not a good decision. That's not the right thing to do." And though it might feel like a wound at the time, it comes from a heart of someone who is really a true friend and wants the best from you. As it says, "Profuse are the kisses of an enemy." Those who aren't real friends will just tell you what you want to hear. But we need people who love us enough, who are willing to be our friends enough that they're willing to be honest with us. And I can tell you many times, Ruth has graciously told me not what I wanted to hear, but what I needed to hear. And, that would imply that we too need to be people who are teachable, who are willing to receive instruction from our friends. The fourth thing is that our friends need to be wise. They need to be people who are wise. Proverbs 27:17. Proverbs 27:17 says, "Iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another." Think about sharpening your knives in the kitchen. You get out that sharpening tool, that long piece of metal, and you take your knife and you rub them back and forth to sharpen the blade on your knife. Well, this proverb is saying that friends should be like that. They should sharpen each other. They should be people who are wise, who help you to become more wise. I can say that Ruth is very humble and helps me to become more humble. She's extremely calm and level-headed. And I can say without exaggeration that in 40 years, even though she's experienced adversity as well, in 40 years living life right beside her, I have never seen her lose it and just explode or lose her temper or whatever. And that sharpens me. That helps me. That helps me to be the person that I should be. And, there's a saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? You need to be around people who are wise and are going to help you to be a better person. I need that. We all need that. The fifth one is this person, our friend, should be trustworthy, someone that we can trust. Proverbs 16:28. Proverbs 16:28 says, "A whisperer separates close friends." You know who the whisperer is? The one who will start talking like this. Hey, don't tell anybody, but this, or this person, this and that, or did you hear about her? The whisper, when the voice starts lowering, it's a red flag that something is happening that shouldn't be happening, and that person is betraying someone's trust often. And when they're betraying the trust of others to you, don't be foolish. They betray your trust to others as well. It's not like you're the only one that is the recipient of the whispering. So we need to choose friends who are trustworthy, who aren't people who are prone to gossip and always talk about others and betray the confidence of others. The next one, the sixth one, is we need to find friends who are forgiving. It's important that we have friends who are forgiving. Proverbs 17:9 says, whoever covers an offense seeks love. That's Proverbs 17:9. Someone who's willing to cover an offense. You will fail in your friendships. You will fail your friends. And you know what? Your friends will fail you too. We will all fail each other. We will wrong each other. And that's why we need friends who are willing to cover that offense, who don't always have to go to war with us every time we fail. And the same is true. We don't war with them every time that they fail. And then the seventh is we need to find friends who are loyal, people who are loyal. Proverbs 19:26. Proverbs 19:26 says, a man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother, someone who is willing to be loyal to you. And I have definitely experienced that with Ruth throughout the years. I've had times, I remember times that there was actually a family member of mine that was so bent on being mean to my kids and would exclude my kids from all sorts of things, and they would invite Ruth's family. And I remember Ruth saying, you know what, if your kids can't go, my kids can't go either. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, just let them go. But just the knowledge that someone's got your back like that, that someone's going to be loyal to you and protect you and stand up for you and be willing to, make decisions based upon the fact that you might be hurt or wronged. It just makes you feel better. But like any good thing in this life, good things require effort. They require work. And there's going to be work that comes with building and maintaining these good friendships. And there are obstacles to building and maintaining these friendships. Some of the obstacles might not be things that we would see as obstacles from the beginning, but you know what an obstacle to friendships can be? Is our marriages. An obstacle to our friendship can be our marriages. And I'm saying this in the sense that our marriage has got to be our number one relationship in this life. It's got to be our number one relationship. When we stand before God in marriage, we're making a promise. We're saying before God and man, for better, for worse, in sickness and health, till death do us part. We're making what people call a covenant. It's like a contract there. You're saying, I will be with this one person for the rest of my life. And our friendships aren't contracts. They're not covenants like that. So we need to find friends who are going to help us to make our marriages our primary relationship. And that's how our marriages can be a hindrance to our friendships, is if we don't have friends who are going to do that for us, who are going to help us to keep our marriage as our number one relationship, then they can be a hindrance to us. And, there'll be times, especially as we have these close friendships, that we'll talk to our friends about our struggles in marriage. We'll say, I'm struggling right now, or he did this, or he thought this. And our friends have got to encourage us and say, you know what, he's a great guy. I mean, he does this and he does this, and point us to truth, point us to whatever will help us to stay in that marriage, not say, yeah, he's a real loser, you need to get out of there. right? Someone who will encourage us to keep our marriages strong. And if we say something about our husband, like, oh, I'm so bummed, he wanted me to do this and I didn't want to do this, or he wanted to vacation here, I didn't want to, they're not going to look at our husband next week like he's an idiot, right? They're going to look at him and say, no, this is a great guy. This is my friend's husband, and I am here to support this marriage, not someone who will look down on your husband. And another potential obstacle is not our husbands, but our kids. Our kids can get in the way of our friendships. I've seen throughout the years that when people correct people, you can take pretty much correction in anything. But if someone corrects your parenting or your kids, it's like the hair on the back of your neck stands up. Like, don't you dare tell me about my kids or what to do with my kids. I love my kids. You don't love my kids. You don't know my kids. And we make all these excuses for our kids. We need to have friends that will encourage us in good parenting, encourage us to make good choices in our parenting, but aren't going to go to war with us over our kids. And, our friends, if they have kids and we have kids, they're going to hang out together and play together. And suddenly the time will come that their kid seems like the devil and your kid seems like an angel. Right? And it's like, okay, this kid is terrible and my kid is great. And that child is telling your friend, no, I'm the angel and that kid's the devil. Well, having had this with Ruth and I both raising 3 kids, I can tell you that when decades went by and we would talk to the kids, it was like, you know what? We were both the devil. It wasn't like one was so great and the other was so horrible. And we as parents can lean towards favoring our own kid, but most often it's not that one kid was horrible and the other was angelic. They both had their part in whatever the squabble was. Another potential obstacle to our friendships is other friends. We can get jealous of other friends, and that's where we have to remember that this friendship is not a covenant like marriage. We can have many friends. We should have many friends. It's a good thing to have a whole community of friends. You shouldn't be jealous over your friendships, but you should be jealous over your marriage. If I were to come home today and open my bedroom door and there's another woman in the bed with my husband, I'm going to feel jealous. And if I don't, there's something wrong with me. So there are good times to be jealous, but we can't be jealous over our friends like that because we don't have that marriage contract. We don't have that covenant in marriage. Ruth has many other good friends. She goes to other family dinners. She goes on vacation with other people. She's got all sorts of other friends, and that's good. And I thank God for that. And I have actually other friends as well, so praise God. But you know what? Social media sure doesn't help, does it? Because we'll go on social media and we'll see our friends with other friends and they have the perfect pictures and they look like they're having a way better time with those friends than they've ever had with us, and we feel jealousy, we feel hurt, we feel sad by that. And if that happens to you, I would just advise you to limit your social media. Don't be going on there every day, and especially as we're raising kids in this world of social media, and so many of these kids are on social media 24/7 by the time they're junior high school. They're just scrolling through those feeds all day long, and just like it makes us often feel insecure, it makes our kids feel insecure as well. So if we can't limit our social media, they're not going to be able to limit their social media. So my advice is that we limit our social media, especially if looking at it makes us feel bad. And, our advice, in a sense, can be another potential obstacle to our friendships when we enter into disagreements about advice. I read it stated like this in a book I read maybe 30 years ago. It said, this is when we're putting methods over mandates. Mandates would be things like that are, we're all going to agree on. Don't murder. Don't lie, don't steal. Methods are the way that we do things. Like, are we going to breastfeed or bottle feed? Are we going to homeschool, private school, public school? Are we going to let our kids date, and at what age are they going to get to start dating? And we can start warring over these methods, and that's not wise. Different families will choose to do things different ways, and we can discuss it and talk about it, but if we start feeling like our method is the only method, then we can end up in disputes and have problems with our friends that are absolutely unnecessary. And we have to understand, if it's just a method, if it's not some big moral principle that's at stake, then we don't go to war over that. We just say, okay, that's what works for you. This is what works for me. Another obstacle to our friendships can be our feelings. And this is a hard one because we do and we will hurt our friends' feelings. We, again, will sin against each other. We will not treat each other the way that we should. It just will happen. I was thinking about the times that I've sinned against Ruth. And I remember one just really came to mind. We were driving in a car together to church. And I remember internally being frustrated about, I think, some things in my marriage and some things with my parenting and whatever. And Ruth, she had one daughter at the time. I had my one son. They were friends. Her daughter was beautiful, and not only was she beautiful, she was just the sweetest kid. She would do whatever you asked her. She was so nice. And my son was a terror. It's like you would spank him and he'd say, yeah, bring it on. I mean, just so hard. One of those strong-willed kids. And I remember we were driving to church, of all places, and I was talking to Ruth about something, and I said, well, at least my son doesn't just sit there like a dog. And I remember Ruth looking at me like, you're an idiot, and I'm going to overlook that. And I thank God that she did, because that was idiotic and stupid and foolish. And it came from a heart of all sorts of other junk, that I was dealing with myself. And the Proverbs addresses even this. Proverbs 19:11 says, good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense. That's Proverbs 19:11. That was to Ruth's glory, to overlook that, to just say, you know what, I'm not going to go to war over that. Let's keep driving to church. And we did, and I can't even imagine if she had made, a big issue over that, our friendship could have been ruined because of my foolish and careless words. The next one is our pain. Our pain can be an obstacle to our friendships. We may have been betrayed by friends in the past. We may have been friends that aren't like Ruth, that are really hard friends who have betrayed us, and as a result, we put up what we call like boundaries or protective walls. And boundaries are right at times, but at other times, they're kind of foolish, and they keep us from really being able to experience life, because we will be hurt in life. There will be pain in life. And when we're always putting boundaries up to protect ourselves from pain, we almost keep ourselves from opportunities and things that we can enjoy in life. And so, we can't let our past pains keep us from friendships. And I get how that is. I mean, I want to shield myself from pain too. When I was young, 16, I got in a car accident, and it was a really bad car accident. And after I got in that car accident, it was hard for me to drive. But you know what? I drove here today, and I thank God that I drive today. So all I'm using that to express is that even though we may have had a really hard time with a friend, let's not keep that from getting back in and working on new friendships. And it doesn't mean that I'm not going to get in another car accident. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have another friend hurt you or betray you, but we got to keep getting in. We got to keep doing this because we were designed for friendship and community. And if we don't get back in, you know what happens is we can become women who say, well, you know what? All of my friends, my closest friends, are guys. I just don't get along with women. I don't click with women. If that's true, if all of your closest friends are guys, trust me, it's not good for your marriage, and it's not good for their marriages either. And even though it might take some energy and effort, whatever it is, we need to work on friendships with other women, friendships with other females. Well, what if your friends aren't like Ruth? If you don't have friends like this, you need to push the reset button on your friends. I will tell you from experience that as you change, as you start to become more the person that you sense God wants you to be, as you start becoming the person who's different than those friends, they start to just naturally drift off. And that's what happened to me. I had some bad friends in the past because I was a bad person. And as I, decided to follow Christ and I decided to start becoming more the person that God wanted me to be, those friends just started to fall off. And I remember my old best friend being frustrated that I wouldn't do the same things that I used to do with her. And I wasn't as fun, quote unquote, as I used to be. And in time, there just was a distance that took place and that friendship naturally dissolved. But it was funny because decades later, she ended up getting a hold of me and saying, I want to follow God the way you follow God. And God brought that friendship full circle, which is really neat. But, the best way to develop good friends is to be a good friend to others. And that's the third point here, so to speak. The third point is determined to be a good friend. Determined to be a good friend. Be the friend that you want others to be to you. And Jesus talked about this. I'm sure we've all heard of the golden rule. The golden rule, this is in Matthew 7:12, the New Testament. Jesus said, whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them, right? Whatever you want other people to do to you, you do that to them. You want others to be a good friend to you, then you be a good friend to others. And it's not easy. It's not easy to be the one that you want others to be to you, but it's the right thing to do. Our natural bend is to focus on ourselves and to love ourselves. We're all born that way. Our kids are born that way with a focus on themselves. But God says, to be the full human that He's designed us to be, He wants us to focus on Him and to focus on others, to get our focus off of ourselves and onto other people. And so He calls us to be the friend that we would want others to be to us. We all want to be seen, and so we need to see others. We need to notice other people, to learn their names, memorize their names, to make eye contact with them and smile at them. Not look down when they walk by. If we want to be seen, we've got to say, I'm going to make the choice to see others. We want to be heard, and rightfully so, but we need to choose to hear others. Listen to what other people say. When they're talking, don't just tune out, or don't think about what you're going to say next. Really listen to what they're saying. Ask them questions. Ask them about themselves. What are they struggling with? What's hard for them? What are they dealing with right now? Learn about them. Be someone who's willing to hear others. We want people to be faithful to us. We need to be faithful to others. We need to follow through with our commitments. We need to do what we say we were going to do, not bailing on them, not saying, hey, I'll meet you for coffee, and then 20 minutes before something else, I can't come. Or, yeah, I'll go to your kid's birthday party, and then we don't show. Making a bunch of plans, and at the last day, picking the one that seems the best. No, if we want people to be faithful to us, then we need to be faithful to others. We need to be people of our word. We want people to be gracious to us. We need to be gracious to other people. Like Ruth has been for me so many times, we need to be those people who are willing to overlook the offenses of others. That we don't go to war over everything and take everything they say to heart and as a personal dig. There's a verse in the Old Testament in Ecclesiastes that was actually written by the same author of Proverbs. And he says in there, I love this, Ecclesiastes 7:21 and 22, he says, don't take to heart all the things that people say. So don't take everything your friends say personally as a personal attack. He says, lest you hear your servant cursing you. In other words, you're going to hear someone cursing you for this person, even the servant, even the person who was a lower social status than them. And then he adds, your heart knows that many times you yourself have cursed others. And you know, that's the funny thing. We tolerate it when we do it to someone else, but when someone does it to us, no possible way. And we need to show the same grace to other people that we show ourselves, right? We make excuses for ourselves. When I said that to Ruth, it's because I was frustrated in my heart or whatever. God knows why I did that. We make excuses for it. We need to give other people the same grace. We want to be loved. We need to choose to love others, live a life of love. Love really meaning actively putting the interest of others before ourselves. And Ruth has so done that in my life, being there for me, actively caring for me, and not only me, but my whole family, my husband, my kids, even my parents, my brothers, everyone. She has been so active in their life that, sometimes I'll think, you better not like Ruth more than you like me. And I'm serious. I mean, she's such a loving person, always putting the interest of others before herself. And if I promise that if you do these things, if you determine to be this good friend, people will want to be your friend. They will choose to befriend you. Others will want to be around you. Everybody wants to be Ruth's friend. But even when you have someone like Ruth in your life or a community of friends, even when you have a best friend, you will discover that no friend ultimately can take the place of God. No friend can be God to you. There's an old scholar, theologian from, I think, the 3rd century, Augustine was his name. He said beautifully, God, you have made us for yourself, and our heart is restless until it rests in you. Saying that even though the gift of friendship is a beautiful gift, our hearts will still be restless until we finally settle them in a relationship with God. And we have to remember that although friendship is an incredible gift from God, it's a gift. It's not God himself. And even the best friends, even Ruth, cannot and will not ever be God to me. We're both very busy, and we don't talk to each other every day. But it's funny, when something terrible happens to me, the first thing I do is run to my phone and start calling Ruth. And, often we'll have our phones on silent and we'll be working, and it's like ring, hang up, call again, missed call. And then finally I'll think, okay, God, I'll just talk to you. And sometimes I'll see the same thing, 5, 6 missed calls. And I'll text her back and say, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry I missed your call. And she'll say, no, it's good. God used that to show me that I probably should have talked to him first. We both respond with seriously. We do this thing all the time, but it's a great reminder that God is the one that can truly satisfy the most deep longings of our soul. He's the one who enables us to be the friend that we should be, and he's the one that graces us with the gift of friends and communities. And the neat thing is, in a group like this, you have the opportunity to develop those friendships that might go on to last for years and for decades to come. So thank you guys for listening. I hope you have some good and honest discussion in your groups.